Good morning, children. Hearty welcome to all of you for today's session. Come, let's learn English. And here is your English teacher, Jyotimol. Okay, children, in this session, I have a new story for you. A new lesson from our Moments textbook, our supplementary reader. Lesson 6, Weathering the Storm in Ersama. Okay, so before moving ahead with the textbook, I'll give you a brief introduction to our lesson. Actually, it's not a story, children. It's a real one, happened in the state of Odisha in the year 1999. Okay, so our lesson 6, Weathering the Storm in Ersama, it's written by Harsh Mander. Okay, so let's see the introduction. The story gives an account of the storm that hit the coastal town of Ersama in Odisha state in the year 1999. A young boy, Prashant, faced the fury of the storm and reached his village. The details of how he worked hard to help the villagers overcome the devastation caused by the storm inspire us to have courage and a positive approach towards life. Sorry, children. Okay, so once again, children, I'll give you the introduction. The story gives us a description of the storm that hit the coastal town of Ersama in Odisha in the year 1999. A young boy, Prashant, who is the hero of our lesson. A young boy, Prashant, faced the fury of the storm. What do you mean by fury? Fury means the powerful or the extreme strength of the wind. So, yes, Prashant, a small boy, Prashant, a young boy, he faced the fury of the storm. He faced the power of the storm and reached his village. Then the story gives us the details of how he worked hard to help the villagers overcome the destruction caused by the storm. And that inspires us to have courage and a positive approach towards life. Okay, so let's see the story. So let me read the first portion, children. Yes, the lesson, Weathering the Storm in Ersama. On 27th October 1999, 7 years after his mother's death, Prashant had gone to the block headquarters of Ersama, a small town in coast Orissa, some 18 kilometers from his village, to spend the day with a friend. In the evening, a dark and menacing storm quickly gathered. Winds beat against the house with a speed and fury that Prashant had never witnessed before. Heavy and incessant rain filled the darkness. Ancient trees were uprooted and crashed to the earth. Screams rent the air as people and houses were swiftly washed away. The angry waters swirled into his friend's house neck deep. The building was of brick and mortar and was strong enough to survive the devastation of the wind's velocity of 350 km per hour. But the cold terror of the family grew with the crashing of trees that had got uprooted and fallen on their house, sometime in the middle of the night, damaging its roof and walls. Okay, children, it's a lengthy paragraph, but it's very simple. Okay, so I'll give you the meaning of some new words. See the first one, children. The first one is menacing. M-E-N-A-C-I-N-G. You will get the word in the fifth line. So menacing means dangerous and harmful. Fury, F-U-R-Y, fury means extreme strength. Incessant means continuous. Ancient, the meaning of ancient is old. Rent, R-E-N-T. What do you mean by R-E-N-T? R-E-N-T, rent. Rent means here. See, the first line, children, screams rend. So here rend means filled, swirled, moved or flowed along with a whirling motion. Then the next one is a mortar. Mortar, a mixture of lime, cement, sand, and water used to construct buildings. Okay, so let's see the explanation of this paragraph. Prashant. Prashant was a native of a village in the coastal state of Odisha. At present, Orissa is known as Odisha. Okay, so Prashant was a native of a village in the coastal state of Odisha. On 27th October 1999, he was on a visit to a friend in Ersama. Ersama is a small town in Odisha and a block headquarter in Jagatpura district also. So his village, Prashant's village, was at a distance of 18 kilometers from Ersama. He had lost his mother 7 years ago. So that day, a strong storm gathered in the evening. Furious wind, accompanied by continuous rain, lashed the place. Screams could be heard as trees got uprooted and destroyed the houses as they fell on them. The water flowed with a gush and swept away houses that came in its way. There was a neck-deep water in his friend's house. Actually, Prashant was in his friend's house. Okay. So, there was neck-deep water in his friend's house. As his house was a pakka house, as his friend's house was a pakka house, it was able to resist the strong winds, which blew at a speed of 350 kilometers per hour. Have you noticed the speed of the wind, children? Yes, that 350 kilometers per hour. His friend's family was terrorized. They were frightened because in the middle of the night, trees had fallen on the house, damaging the roof and walls of the building. So actually what is happening there, children? Yes, Prashant was on his visit to his friend. Where is that place? It's in Ersama. Then what's the speciality of Ersama? Ersama is a small town in Odisha, and at the same time it's a block headquarter in Jagatpura district. Then it was 18 kilometers away from his village. Okay, so what happened then, children? That evening there was furious wind accompanied by continuous rain and lashed the place. So Prashant had to stay there. He could not return to his village that day. Okay, so let's see the next paragraph. The crazed destruction wrought by the cyclone and the surge of the ocean continued for the next 36 hours. Although wind speeds had reduced somewhat by the next morning. To escape the waters rising in the house, Prashant and his friend's family had taken refuge on the roof. Prashant will never forget the shock he experienced at his first glimpse of the devastation wrought by the super cyclone in the grey light of the early morning. The storm continued. Okay, so the next morning, at a raging deadly brown sheet of water covered everything as far as the eye could see. Only fractured cement houses still stood in a few places. Bloated animal carcasses and human corpses floated in every direction. All round, even huge old trees had fallen. 2 coconut trees had fallen on the roof of their house. This was a blessing in disguise because the tender coconuts from the trees kept the trapped family from starving in several days that followed. Again, another lengthy paragraph, children. No problem. Let's see the explanation. First of all, I'll give you the meaning of some new words. Surge. S-U-R-G-E. It's in the first line, children. The crazed destruction wrought by the cyclone and the surge of the ocean. Surge means gush. G-U-S-H. Gush, or the strong flow of water. The surge of the ocean. The strong flow of the water to the ocean. Okay, so next one is refuge. Refuge, shelter. Refuge, shelter. Then rot. that word is also in the first line, children. Yes, the crazed destruction wrought by the cyclone. Wrought means produced as a result of something. Wrought means produced. Then, next word is fractured. Fracture. Fracture means broken. Bloated, swollen. 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 Animal carcasses. Carcasses means dead bodies of animals. Animal carcasses, dead bodies of animals. Then another phrase is here, children. Blessing in disguise. What do you mean by blessing in disguise? An apparent misfortune that eventually has good results. Blessing in disguise means an apparent misfortune. Actually, it's a misfortune, but it has good results. Okay, then tender, TENDER, tender means soft. Okay, so let's see the explanation. Yes, the storm continued for the next 1.5 days. All through the wind had slowed down. Okay, children, the storm continued for the next 1.5 days. Although the wind had slowed down, the power of the wind had slowed down. To escape the rising levels of water, Prashant, along with his friend and his family, took shelter on the roof of the house. As the day dawned or as the day broke, Prashant saw the destruction caused by the super cyclone. Did you get that, children? Yes, the storm continued for the next 1.5 days. But what's the condition of the wind? Yes, the wind had slowed down. The wind had slowed down, but to escape the rising level of water, the level of water has increased. So, in order to escape the rising level of water, Prashant, along with his friend and his family, they took shelter on the roof of the house. As the day dawned, what do you mean by DAWNAD? As the day broke, BROKE, on the next day, Prashant saw the destruction caused by the super cyclone. So, what's the condition, children? Yes, as far as Prashant could see, he saw a cover of muddy brown water. So, as far as he could see, what he had seen there, children? Yes, he saw a cover of muddy brown water. There were the remains of the shattered houses surrounded by the water. Dead bodies of animals and human beings floated in the water. Huge trees had fallen and were floating round. 2 coconut trees had fallen on the roof of their house. Initially, that means in the beginning, they thought that the trees had damaged the roof and walls of the house. But later, they realized that it's a blessing in disguise. What do you mean by that, children? Yes, initially they thought that the trees had damaged the roof and walls of the house, but later they realized that this proved to be a beneficial for them. It's useful for them. What's the reason, children? Yes, it's a blessing in disguise. The 2 coconut trees. Yes, first of all, they thought that the trees had damaged the roof and walls of the house. But later, they realized that this proved to be a beneficial for them. It's useful for them. As they were trapped in the house, they ate the raw coconut from these trees and saved themselves from dying due to starvation. What's the reason, children? Yes, for the storm continued for the next 1.5 days. Did you understand, children? The storm continued for the next 1.5 days. So, it was a blessing in disguise for them. So, what did they do with the coconut trees, children? Yes, as they were trapped in the house or as they were trapped on the roof of the house, they ate the tender coconuts from these trees and saved themselves from dying due to starvation. Okay, so 2 coconut trees had fallen on the roof of their house. So, first of all, or at the beginning, they thought that the trees had damaged the roof and the walls of the house. But later, they realized that it was a blessing in disguise. What's the reason, children? Yes, as they were trapped on the roof of the house, they ate the tender coconuts from these trees and saved themselves from dying due to starvation. Okay, so let's see the next one. For the next 2 days, Prashant sat huddled with his friend's family in the open of the rooftop. They froze in the cold and the incessant rain. The rainwater washed away Prashant's tears. The only thought that flashed through his mind was whether his family had survived the fury of the super cyclone, or was he to be bereaved once again. Okay, so let's see the explanation of that first paragraph. Huddled. What do you mean by huddled, children? It's in the first line, children. For the next 2 days, Prashant sat huddled with his friend's family. Huddled means together in a group. Together in a group. Then flashed through his mind, you are very familiar with the word flashed through his mind, came to his mind. Flashed through his mind means came to his mind. Then bereaved. What do you mean by bereaved? To have lost a family member or a friend to death. Bereaved means to have lost a family member or a friend to death. Okay, so let's see the explanation, children. Yes, they spend the next 2 days on the rooftop. Who spent, children? Prashant and his friend and his family members spent the next 2 days on the rooftop. Everyone was so scared that they sat together in a group. Did you understand, children? Yes, they huddled there. What do you mean by huddle? Huddled. I told you huddle means together in a group. So as I told you, Prashant sat huddled with his friend's family in the open of the rooftop. So everyone was scared. Everyone was so frightened that they sat together in a group on the rooftop. It was very cold and the continuous rain washed away Prashant's tears. So it was very cold and the continuous rain washed away Prashant's tears means everyone was so scared. Everyone was in tears. So he was worried about his family members. He was worried about his family members. What's the reason, children? Yes, because he was 18 kilometers away from his village. He was in a worry. What's the reason, children? Yes, maybe he could have lost another family member and would be in grief over the loss of loved one once again. What's the reason, children? Yes, 7 years before he lost his mother. 7 years back, he lost his mother. So he was in a worry. Maybe he could have lost another family member or would be in grief over the loss of a loved one once again. So this thought worried him a lot. So Prashant was in a very sad condition. He was very anxious about his family members. He was so worried about his family members. Okay, then 2 days later, next paragraph, children. 2 days later, which seemed to Prashant like 2 years, the rain ceased and the rainwater slowly began to recede. Prashant was determined to seek out his family without further delay. But the situation was still dangerous, and his friend's family pleaded with Prashant to stay back a little while longer. But Prashant knew he had to go. So here only one word is, that is what is difficult to children. Recede means reduce or move back. Okay, so once again I'll give you the explanation of that paragraph. 2 days later. So 2 days later, which seemed to Prashant like 2 years. So the rain stopped after 2 days. The rain stopped after 2 days. It seemed to Prashant that the 2 days' time was as long as the duration of 2 years. Did you get the sentence, children? Yes, it seemed to Prashant that the 2 days' time was as long as the duration of 2 years. So this shows that it was very difficult for him to pass the time. What's the reason, children? Because he was totally confused or he was totally worried about his family members. Okay, so the rain had stopped and the water was receding gradually. Water was reducing gradually. So although it was dangerous to go out, he did not waste any more time and left to find his family. So Prashant, still it's very dangerous to go out. What did he do, children? Yes, he didn't waste much time. He decided to leave to his village to find his family. His friend's family requested Prashant here to stay back, but he left. Did you understand, children? Yes, Prashant knew he had to go. What's the reason, children? Yes, he wanted to find out his family members. He wanted to know whether they were survived by the super cyclone. Clear? Okay, so let's move on to our next paragraph. He equipped himself with a long, sturdy stick and then started on his 18-kilometer expedition back to his village through the swollen floodwaters. It was a journey he would never forget. He constantly had to use the stick to locate the rod to determine whether the water was most shallow. At places, it was waist deep and progress was slow. At several points, he lost the road and had to swim. After some distance, he was relieved to find two friends of his uncle who were also returning to their village. They decided to move ahead together. So, what's going on there, children? Yes, expedition. What do you mean by expedition, children? Yes, it's in the second line, children. Yes, 18-kilometer expedition. Expedition means a journey. Okay, so what did he do, children? Yes, he started his journey. He decided to move ahead. So, with the help of a long stick, he equipped himself with a long sturdy stick. Have you seen that? Yes, with the help of a long stick, Prashant started the 18-kilometer long journey back home. He decided to return to his village. So, with the help of a long stick, Prashant started his journey. As he passed through the floodwater, the journey got inscribed in his mind forever. What's the reason, children? Yes, as he passed through the journey, or as he passed through the flood water, the journey got inscribed in his mind forever. So, what's the meaning, children? Yes, it was a journey he would never forget. It was a journey that much. It was very difficult for him to move ahead through the flood water. See, here is the reason, children. Yes, the journey was very difficult for him. It was a journey he would never forget. He had to use the stick to guide him and find the path where the water was shallower. So, it was, what's the use of the stick, children? Yes, he had to use the stick to guide him or to find the path where the water was shallower. What do you mean by shallow? Not deep. At some places, the water was waist deep and his pace slowed down. At some places, he lost a track of the rod and had to swim to save himself from drowning. Then, after some time, he was relieved. He was comforted. What's the reason, children? Yes, because he got the company of two of his friends along with their uncle were returning to the village. So, all of them proceeded together. So, what is going on there, children? Yes, once again, I'll give you the explanation, children. With the help of a long stick, Prashant started the 18-kilometer long journey back home. So, as he passed through the flood water, the journey, it was very difficult for him to continue because it was a journey that he would never forget. What's the reason? He had to use the stick to guide him to find the path where the water was shallower. Shallower, as I told you, shallower means not so deep. But at some places the water was waist deep, the water was deeper, or his place or his pace, pace slowed down means he wanted to move ahead very slowly. Then at some places he had lost his track or the track of the rod and had to swim to save himself from drowning. And after some time he got relieved. What's the reason, children? Because he got the company of two friends who, along with their uncle, were returning to their village. All of them proceeded together. So, after some time or after some distance, he was relieved. He was a little bit comfortable to find two of his friends or his uncle who were returning to their village. So, they decided to move ahead together. Clear? So, the next paragraph. As they waded through the waters, the scenes they witnessed grew more and more macabre. Not macabre, children, macabre. M-A-C-A-B-R-E, macabre. They had to push away many human bodies, men, women, children, and carcasses of dogs, goats, cattle, and that the current swept against them as they moved ahead. So in every village that they passed, they could barely see a house standing. Prashant now wept out loud and long. He was sure his family could not have survived the catastrophe. Okay, so let's see the explanation, children. See the first two, three words. Waded. Waded means swam. As they move through the flood water. So waded here, waded means swam. Then macabre, as I told you, not a macabre. Macabre means horrible. Macabre means horrible. Then catastrophe, disaster. Catastrophe, disaster. So as the group proceeded, so who were their children? Yes, Prashant had seen two friends of his uncle who were also returning to their village. So as the group proceeded, as the group moved ahead, they got to see horrible scenes. They happened to see or they witnessed horrible scenes. They had to push dead bodies of human beings and animals which were being swept around the current of the water. So what is going on there, children? They had to push away many human bodies, men, women, children, and carcasses of human dogs to goat and cattle that the current swept against them as they move ahead. So they had to push dead bodies of human beings as well as animals which were being swept around with the current of the water. Then, as they crossed villages, not even a single house was seen. So what is going on there, children? As they crossed the villages, not even a single house was seen. So as Prashant's fear grew, he wept loudly. What is the reason, children? Yes, Prashant started to cry loudly. He wept loudly because he was sure that his family members would not have survived the disaster. Did you understand, children? Yes, he realized or he was sure that his family members would not have survived the catastrophe or the disaster. Clear? So the next one, the last slide, children. Yes, eventually Prashant reached his village Kalikuda. His heart went cold. Where their home once stood, there were only remnants of its roof. Some of their belongings were caught, mangled, and twisted in the branches of the trees, just visible above the dark waters. Young Prashant decided to go to the Red Cross shelter to look for his family. So, what is going on there, children? Yes, remnants. Have you seen the word, children? Remnants. It's in the third line. Remnants means small remaining quantities or the remains. Okay, so let's see the explanation. Yes, at last Prashant reached his village Kaligoda. So, eventually, gradually, Prashant reached his village Kaligoda. His heart went cold. What do you mean by that word, children? Yes, his heart broken. What happened? Yes, he could see only the remains of his house. When Prashant reached his village, Kaligoda, he was very, very worried. He was so sad. He became numb, N-U-M-B. He became totally sad on seeing the remains of his house. Their belongings were scattered in the water, and some things hung on the branches of the trees just above the floodwater. So he realized that his family, they had not seen their. Yes, so at last he decided to look for his family at the shelter set up by the Red Cross Society. Understood, children? Yes. So once again, children, listen. When Prashant reached his village, Kaligoda, he became heartbroken. He couldn't bear the sight. What's the reason, children? Their belongings were scattered in the water, and some of the things that hung on the branches of the trees just above the floodwater that he could see. So he could see some of the things of his house that were hung on the branches of the trees just above the floodwater. So he decided to look for his family at the shelter set up by the Red Cross Society. Okay, so next paragraph. Among the first people he saw in the crowd was his maternal grandmother. Weak with hunger, she rushed to him, her hands outstretched, her eyes brimming. It was a miracle. they had long given him up for dead. So, eyes brimming. What do you mean by children? Eyes brimming. Eyes were full of tears. Eyes brimming means eyes were full of tears. So, what is going on there, children? Yes, at the Red Cross shelter, he saw his maternal grandmother. You know what's the meaning of maternal, or what's the difference between maternal and paternal? Maternal means of mothers, paternal means of fathers. So at the Red Cross shelter, he saw his maternal grandmother. So his maternal grandmother. So she appeared very weak, but was glad to see that Prashant was alive. They had long given him for dead. What do you mean by that, children? Yes, she rushed to him with her arms open and her eyes full of tears. It was a miracle for her. What's the reason? Because the family had thought that Prashant would not have survived the storm. Did you get the sentence, children? They had long given him up for dead. They had long given him up for dead means they thought that Prashant would not have survived the storm. They thought that Prashant was dead. Clear? So once again, children, at the Red Cross shelter, he saw his maternal uncle. He saw his mother's mother. She appeared weak, but she was very glad. She was very happy to see that Prashant was alive. So, what did she do, children? Yes, she rushed to him with her arms open and her eyes full of tears. She was so happy to see him alive. So, it was a miracle for her, as the family thought that Prashant would not have survived the storm. Okay, so let's move on to the last paragraph of today's session, children. See, listen. Quickly, word spread, and his extended family gathered around him and hugged him tight in relief. Prashant anxiously scanned the motley, battered group. His brother and sister, his uncle and aunts, all seemed to be there. So, what is going on there, children? Yes, motley. What do you mean by motley? Motley means desperate. Motley. Motley means desperate. It's in the fourth line, children. The last word, motley. Yes, here it is. Motley, not in the fourth line, children. It's in the third line. Third line, the first word, motley. So, motley means desperate. What do you mean by motley? Desperate. Desperate means varied in their appearance and character. Then battered. Battered means battered group. Battered means injured group. So what is going on there, children? Yes. So just listen. As Prashant's family came to know that he had come, they gathered around him and hugged him in relief. So quickly, word spread. Quickly, the word spread. Prashant is alive. Prashant is alive. So quickly that word spread, and his extended family gathered around him. His extended family gathered around. They came around him. So his family came to know that he had come. They gathered around him and hugged him in relief. They were all very happy to see him alive. So Prashant, what did he do? He anxiously scanned the family, or he anxiously looked at them. So Prashant saw that everyone was worried and injured. Even if they are alive, they all are worried and injured. Battered means injured. So he scanned the motley battered group. The motley battered group means the desperate family. So they were very worried. They were all worried, but they were all alive. So what did he do? Prashant anxiously scanned the motley battered group, injured group. All are there. His brother and sister, his uncles, aunts, they all seemed to be there. So he was so happy to see them. All of them have survived the cyclone. Okay, so 2-3 pages are there, children. Now let's see the story of the lesson the next class. But you have to read the lesson as a whole, children. It's very important, children. You have to read the lesson thoroughly and find out the answers also. Okay, so no need to depend on my notes, children. You have to find out a question and its answer too. But you are not doing that. I am very sure that you are all just write the notes and close the books. Not like that, children. You have to first of all read the lesson for 2-3 times and try to write the notes. Okay. Nowadays, I am not giving you any assignments. Do you know the reason, children? Because you are all not responding. A few means 20-21 students, they are regular in writing their notes. That's why I am not giving you any assignments. But children, you have to read the lesson thoroughly, not to depend on my notes, children. Okay, so thank you, children. Have a nice day.